Hi all! We're going to do a writing activity today so that I can get to know you. I'll explain more in a minute. I'm going to read to you Mr. Topsy Turvy, this storybook. You'll know the Mr. Men series, I'm certain of that. Afterwards, I'm going to ask you to make a plan and then, probably tomorrow, write a story about a topsy-turvy day in your life. Now, there are 2 reasons I'm getting you to do this activity at the beginning of the year. The first reason is for me to get to know you as a person. So I'd love you to incorporate in your topsy-turvy story things from your own life. So, passion that you're involved in, things you love doing at home, outside of school, the people you like to mix with, as well as the things you love doing at school. This will help me get to know you much better. So if you have after-school activities you love doing, things in school or out of school, pets maybe, places you like to visit, I really, really want to use this opportunity when I'm reading your story to make a connection with you and get to know you better. The second reason we're doing this is so I can also get to know you as a writer. So I'd love to know how you plan a story. I'd love to know the language that you use. I would love to know about your punctuation. I'd love to know your sense of humour and if it comes out in your stories. I would love to know about your handwriting and your spelling as well. And finally, I want to know about your level of concentration, how long you can sustain your writing for at any period of time. So we'll do this over a few sessions. There is a lot that I can learn from you once I read your story, see your sketches and your plans. Okay, here we go with the story to inspire you. Mr. Topsy Turvy was a funny sort of fellow. Everything about him was either upside down or inside out or back to front. Topsy-turvy, in fact. It was all very extraordinary. Now you'll notice here that the author does use some interesting punctuation, which I'd love to see from you. To give you some idea of how Mr. Topsy-turvy was, you ought to see his house. The front door is upside down to start with. The curtains hang upside down at the windows, and just look at the chimney pot. All very extraordinary. Inside is the same. Just look at the clock standing on Mr. Topsy-turvy's mantelpiece. Isn't that the topsiest-turviest clock you've ever seen? And just look at the way Mr. Topsy-turvy reads a book. Not only does he read it upside down, but he starts to read it at the back page. Oh, maybe he's reading a Japanese book. And just look at where Mr. Topsy-turvy puts the stamp when he sends a letter to somebody. Have you ever seen anything like it? You probably don't know this. Maybe you've not sent postcards or letters, but the stamp should go up there. Now this story is all about the time Mr. Topsy-turvy came to the town where you and I live. Nobody is quite sure how Mr. Topsy-turvy got there or where he came from, but he did arrive because somebody saw him getting off the train. Trouble was, he did it in a topsy-turvy way and got out the wrong side and fell onto the railway line. Which really isn't that surprising, is it? When he picked himself up and managed to find his way out of the station, Mr. Topsy-turvy went to a hotel room to find a room to spend the night. The hotel manager tried not to smile when he saw Mr. Topsy-turvy walk into his hotel carrying his suitcase upside down and his topsy-turvy hat on his head. "Good afternoon, sir," he said. "Can I help you?" Now, something you didn't know about Mr. Topsy-turvy is the way he speaks. You see, he sometimes gets things the wrong way round. "Afternoon, good," said Mr. Topsy-turvy to the hotel manager. "I'd room I like." The manager scratched his head. "Do you mean you'd like a room?" he asked. "Please, yes," replied Mr. Topsy-turvy. Eventually, the hotel manager managed to work out what Mr. Topsy-turvy was talking about, and he was taken up in a lift to a bedroom. Then Mr. Topsy-turvy unpacked his suitcase, put on his pyjamas and went to bed. He was rather tired after travelling from wherever he came from. Uh-oh. The following day, Mr. Topsy Turvy went round the town, but what a fuss his going around the town caused. He took a taxi from the hotel, but so confused the taxi driver trying to tell him where he wanted to go. The poor man drove straight into a traffic light. "Oh dear," said Mr. Topsy Turvy. "I am sorry very." Then he went into a big department store in the middle of town and he walked up to one of the counters. "I'd like a sock of pears," he said to the lady behind the counter. "You mean a pair of socks?" she smiled, and she showed him a pair of bright red socks, which Mr. Topsy Turvy promptly put on his hands. Uh-oh. Then he tried to leave, but being Mr. Topsy Turvy, he tried to walk down the up escalator, and all the people who were going up the escalator fell over themselves. It was a terrible topsy-turvy jumble. That day, Mr. Topsy Turvy did all sorts of topsy-turvy things. He walked backwards across the street crossing and caused an enormous traffic jam. He went to the library and put all the books upside down on the shelves and made everybody extremely cross. Then he went to an art gallery and insisted on hanging all the pictures upside down so that he could look at the pictures properly. And then after Mr. Topsy Turvy had been in the town for just one day, he disappeared. Nobody knew how he went or where he went, but he certainly went because he wasn't there anymore. And the whole team breathed a sigh of relief. The whole town breathed a sigh of relief. But what the town discovered, even though Mr. Topsy Turvy had left, was that everything was still topsy-turvy. "Read all about it," shouted the newspaper sellers. "Read all it about," shouted the newspaper sellers, instead of shouting, "Read all about it." "News is the here," said the television newsreader, instead of saying, "Here is the news." "Morning good," people started saying to each other when they met. "Do you how," instead of "How do you do." Everybody was talking topsy-turvy. Can you think of something to say that's topsy-turvy? Go on, turn and try with your neighbour. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So your task is to sketch out a plan for a story about your topsy-turvy day based on things that really happen in your life so I can get to know you better. Remember, you don't have to jam-pack the story. This story is particularly jam-packed. Think about making it a manageable story that you can sketch out, write, whilst considering all the elements of a good writer. Enjoy!